All right, it's 6:34, Alice, if you want to get started.
Mallory?
Yes.
She may have a bad connection. Alice,
I'm here, Alice.
Great.
Okay, perfect. We have a quorum, Allison, at 6:30.
And Mallory, let me know when you're ready to start.
We can start whenever. Good.
it would appear that she may have some audio difficulties.
Go ahead, Alice.
Oh, dear. Mallory,
We're-
can you hear us?
Yep,
Yep.
we can hear you now.
Yeah,
She's not able to hear us.
Alice isn't.
Alice is not, yeah.
Back. Try logging out and
Mallory, it's recording, but I can't hear anything.
try.
Let's do this here. Let me see if I can reach her by phone. Explain to her
Yep.
what the situation is. One
Thank
moment.
you. You should try to log out and log back in.
She probably needs to do that or check her audio on
Yeah.
her.
Any luck?
We can hear you. It seems you can't hear us most of the time. If you can hear this, we're about to call you.
Hi. Seem to
Hey,
be having technical
yeah,
difficulties.
yeah, it's on your end. Everybody can hear each
Oh.
other, but you cannot hear us. Can you
Oh.
log out and log back in, please?
Okay,
Thank you. I'll stay on the call. Just let's try this again.
okay.
You should just be able to log in using the Zoom link, Alice. Right. Valerie, would you kindly send the meeting link to Alice on her regular email?
Yeah.
Thank you. And attendees, we do apologize. We seem to be having some technical difficulties, and we do need to have Alice on this call in order to have a quorum.
All right. She's back.
Unmute. Okay, now?
Yep, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yay.
Mm.
Okay. Many apologies to our listening audience, as the comedians would say. Okay, so at this late order, I'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, I believe. We have myself, Alice Livedall, Francois Steiger, and Christopher Monroe. Do we have anybody else, Mallory?
No, ma'am, not that.
Okay, well, that does constitute a quorum. So we're going to meet. I have to announce that our meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. And by order of the governor, we are allowed to meet virtually, which we're doing tonight due to the COVID surge. So I do see I saw earlier that there were people in the chat room, or the chat, whatever you call it. Are there public comments from people that are here on things other than item agendas? Do you know, Mallory?
There's no hands going up.
No hands going up. Okay, then we'll go through. There's no minutes to be approved tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then the first order of business is a public hearing, which I'm going to call, and then I have some comments before we take public input. Calling the public hearing to order, I need to read pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 11, the Hubbardston Planning Board will hold a public hearing at the Hubbardston Town Hall, Slade Building, 7 Main Street, Hubbardston, but in fact, we're meeting virtually on Thursday, January 20, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. to review proposed changes to Article 6 rate of development for dwelling units of the Hubbardston zoning bylaws. Okay, so having read that, I need to announce to public who may be here to comment that due to the history of this bylaw. So this bylaw has existed. It's existed for 20 years. It's not been changed. It's not been revised. And last year at annual meeting, we voted to extend it for 1 more year. And then these bylaws go to the Attorney General's office to be reviewed for basically for constitutionality. And then while that was going, and that deadline for them to react had been extended. So we just got word from last Friday that they not only that they acted on this bylaw as it exists, and they found it unconstitutional. And the reason is it didn't start out to be unconstitutional by virtue of the fact that it's a rate of development. Bylaws that propose restrictions on rate of development have to be of limited duration and have to be to address a specific need that the town has. And in this case, we've taken the same bylaw, which was passed in 2001 and was approved at that time, but we've done nothing with it. We've just kicked the can down the road and renewed it every 5 years. And now it's been 20 years and they say we cannot do that.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
If I may quickly interject, I think you're absolutely right. The fact that this was actually for the 19 or 20 years, it was kicked down the road. Last year, I think the intention was to work on it, but because we had a number of items on our docket, specifically with regards to the marijuana, I think some context is important here, that we were actually not able, also due to the COVID situation, not able to work done this year on a timely manner. The only reason we asked for an extension is to do a thorough review, which is what actually took place until we got this last minute notice. And I just want to go on record that this particular planning board did spend quite a lot of time to review this here. However, the only reason that we did ask for that extension was in order for this particular planning board to be able to do the appropriate work in order to make sure that the bylaw would be properly framed and then presented to the town. But since then, you have received the notification from the Attorney General, and I will acquiesce with that.
okay, so again, thank you, Francois. That's very helpful, and that's true. We entered this in completely good faith to try to do this. I think that and I spent hours, countless hours, trying to make this bylaw to fix what I perceived as the real roadblocks that it creates for development beyond the cap. But the fact is that the reason they threw it out was not only because it was old, but also because, as they say in their opinion, except when used to give communities breathing room for periods reasonably necessary for purposes of growth planning generally, or a resource problem solving specifically, as determined by the specific circumstances of each case, such as zoning ordinance that do not serve, such zoning ordinances, mean these growth control ordinances, do not serve a public purpose and therefore are unconstitutional. And they go on, this is my opinion, and I'm happy to have the other lawyer on the committee here weigh in, but they, I think what they're saying here is very clearly that the kind of things you would be needing to justify a growth control bylaw was like an overwhelmed school system, a shortage of supply in your public water supply, a shortage of capacity in your public school supply, or some other major reason to restrain growth. And that we didn't present this time. I think it did exist maybe in 2001. I also think the Attorney General's office did not have imposed so much scrutiny in those days. And the major case on this was passed in 2004, which is from which the language I just read is, making it unconstitutional. Of course, this bylaw was passed before that. So it is my feeling that if we submitted a new bylaw without being able to cite one of those overwhelmed services or some other great reason, they would also throw it out. So I think that the prudent thing to do here is to withdraw it from the warrant, but I'm willing to listen to what anyone else has to say, and then we can take a vote. So how about Christopher, being the other lawyer on the board? Do you agree with me on this, or?
Yeah, my observations are essentially the same as what you stated. It does come down to a case from 2004, and it does appear that unless we were to come back and state really a compelling reason, we should expect the same result back from the Attorney General with what we're currently looking about. My concern though is that this is a tremendously popular thing to the residents of the town. So I based upon what we're hearing from the Attorney General, I don't think what we're proposing is going to work, but I don't know if there's further analysis that we should do to see if there are any services that would be impacted, just in order to kind of complete our homework for the townspeople.
I have been invited to the select board, invited, maybe summoned perhaps, to meet with them on Monday. So I was going to explain this, and I was going to say to them, this does not mean that should such a circumstance arise, as it did. There was, Bill is on here, he can tell you, there was 1 year or 2 years where Hubbardston was overwhelmed. And what Katie Young said was a school either went to double sessions or double buses or something. It was just really quite a problem. But so it's there. If a problem evolves, we have every right to go back to it. But the real problem is that the cap was 28 and we've never gotten above 12, and it's usually 6. This year it was 18, but 2020 was a really low year with around, I don't know, 6 or 8 or something. So it shows that we don't need to impose a cap on the number of units, you know? And the problem is it restricted a lot of other things as well, which was what we were trying to alleviate, like the affordable housing units and how many units could be issued at a time to one builder and some of those things. But it doesn't fix the fundamental problem that we didn't have the problem to fix, you know? So I'm willing to explain that to the select board. And if anybody else in the planning board wants to join me, I can have Mallory posted as a planning board meeting tomorrow and everybody can come. But I think we're a town, these were disallowed because of the housing shortage, particularly the housing shortage of affordable housing and moderate rate housing. And this kind of bylaw drives up the price of housing. So it's not favored by the state, even though generally zoning bylaws do get a lot of deference from the state. This one doesn't. And we not only didn't have anywhere near the cap for the number of houses, but we have a very big shortage of moderate and affordable housing in town. We're at 3%, the state wants 10%. So I don't recommend appealing this, which we could also do. You can appeal an attorney general's decisions to the courts. And I don't recommend passing one that is just the same, that leaves the same cap and only fixes the problems around the edges. So, and I'm, you know, you can't always be popular. Sometimes you just have to be right. Do the right thing, you know what I mean?
Appealing it would,
Go ahead, Chris.
oh, sorry, appealing it would certainly be the doing of useless thing, because by the time anything happened with it, it would be long since past the 1-year extension. So that's pretty clear.
I tend to agree here. I think doing something that is popular but is not necessarily fruitful at the very end is going to be a problem. And I think that we need to be, I agree with you. We ought to have a conversation with the select board, explain to those members of the select board who are present at that meeting, the rationale that we're prepared to present to them. And unless they can come up with some other factor that may resurface this year, I think a message probably should be posted. We can post it ourselves on the planning board as to the rationale and the reason why we're not considering that this is that it will be fruitful for us to present Article 6 again.
Okay, I have actually shared the Attorney General's opinion with town administrator.
Yeah.
And Dan Gallant as well. So they know. But
Any
with some-
immediate feedback that you can
Well,
that you can communicate?
I got feedback. So there's a secondary problem here, which is when the AG wrote their first letter to us, you know, we had the signed bylaw and we had this bylaw, right?
Yep.
And they were respectively Articles 23 and 24. And this was Article 23. And in that prior opinion, they said they approved Article 23. And then they went into this lengthy thing about the signed bylaw, saying they didn't have reason to disapprove it, which I guess was their reasoning if they approved it, if you read it closely. So anyway, it's a mix-up, and I wrote an explanation, attached the warrant and the 2 opinions from the AG, and sent them to David Nixon and said, you need to get hold of the Attorney General's office for us and straighten this out, because even though it's clear they meant to approve the sign bylaw and disapprove this rate of development bylaw, they got confused, and now it's going to create, if depending on how they keep their books, It's gonna look like we're trying to enforce an you know. So I talked to him, and in that conversation, he said he would do that, and he passed, I get a very coherent explanation. It was very clear that he would pass it on and take it up with the AGs, but I did speak to him about the rate of development. So I have spoken to him, and, you know, he's had a long time, he's had a life in town administration, and he agreed with me. If you get this bylaw is unconstitutional, and your circumstances haven't changed to make it constitutional, you can't run it again. You know, it's just.
Yeah. Do we have somebody from who are attending as participants who wishes to speak on this matter? Is it appropriate for us? I mean, we're looking for ideas. We're looking for.
I'm happy to hear what anybody has to say, actually. And I see Bill is here too. So
yeah.
Mallory, promote who's ever there that wants to speak.
Bill's promoted. Anybody wants to speak and put their hands up.
Or provide comment or feedback. And again, this is fairly new to us in the sense that this information came to us very recently. Just want to make sure that is clear.
Yeah, last Thursday, I think.
Right.
Bill, I sent a copy to Bill, I think, right, Bill? Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't appear that we have anybody else.
You know, I'm
sorry,
not
Bill.
sure.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just saying I did get a copy.
Okay.
So I think we need to take a motion. I don't know that we have the power to withdraw it, but we can vote to request that the select board withdraw it from the warrant. And I think that motion should be made and we should vote. So
Can I ask a fundamental question? Was this at this point in time, has this been presented as a warrant item formally?
it has been given to the town administrator as a warrant and appears on the draft warrant.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
Well, in
the
that
warrant
case,
isn't closed yet, you know.
no, I understand. So I
yeah.
think to your point, I wasn't sure if it had technically been already submitted. So given the fact that it has been submitted and it is in the draft, I think, yes, the appropriate thing for us would be to, may I suggest this here? We do have the opportunity to speak with the select board next week. I would hold off removing it from the warrant until we have fully engaged the select board on this matter and gotten their feedback. We do still have another meeting that gives us enough time to be able to retract this from the warrant. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's going to change
April
anything. But
11th.
what do you think, Christopher?
I'm somewhat reluctant to pull. I think the end result is it's going to get pulled,
Likely.
but I'm reluctant to do it before bringing it up at the select board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in case there's an issue with it we're missing that they want to opine on.
Okay. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll close the public hearing. Or should I continue the public hearing? What do you do with this?
You should continue the public hearing.
Continue it?
Yeah,
Okay.
because you need to take additional testimony. And if you close the public hearing, then the only testimony you get to admit into the record is your own deliberations.
Okay, well, should I then post a planning board meeting and should we all go to the select board meeting instead of just me on Monday?
Well, that's up to the board, but you should continue to your next meeting where then you can bring the board up to date, or if the board needs, you won't need to do that, but you'll be able to introduce new information as part of your, prior to deliberation.
Okay, so you need a motion to continue a public hearing, do you not?
You do.
Yes.
So I would like to make a motion that this public hearing be continued to our next scheduled planning board meeting, which is scheduled, when is it, Mallory?
The 3rd of
Third?
February.
Until February the 3rd.
Is there a
Yeah.
second?
Second.
Okay, all in
Second.
favor?
I think
No,
we
I
have
have-
Bill stating something here.
Discussion.
He's raised.
So to continue a public hearing, you must continue to a time and date certain. So you need
Okay.
both the time and the date.
Okay, so
So-
you want to revise it, Bill, to make it 6:30 on February 3rd?
Well, it's
Francois?
It is to be commenced at 6:30 and concluded at the time that public hearing concludes during that meeting date.
which is February 3rd. Okay,
Yes,
is there
ma'am.
a second?
Second,
Bill, you still have your
Mark?
hand raised. Are you still objecting, or is there something else we're missing?
No, he's good. Okay,
Oh,
so
okay, thank
we'll
you.
vote.
Right, Francois Steiger, yes.
Monroe, yes.
And Alice Livedall, yes. Okay, so we stand continued until that date. Who do you guys either one want to come on Monday? Because I'll ask Mallory to post it if we're worse getting a quorum, you know?
I have, I will not be able to attend. I am,
Okay,
I have a business meeting that I need to attend from
okay.
on Monday. I apologize.
Are they
What
going
do
to
you-
be in person or virtual?
In person, I believe. They told me in person.
Okay, I'm a maybe for attending the meeting. I
Okay, well, two of
also
us
have
can
a
come
work
anyway.
conflict.
Yes,
Two of us are not a quorum, right? So I won't post it, but you can come if you want. And I definitely will attend. Though, you know, they are meeting in person, but they have a virtual option.
Yeah, the hybrid option.
So you could come by if you wanted to, Chris, virtually.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah,
leave it. Okay, we'll leave
it-
it on.
it's still a maybe for me because of a work commitment.
Okay,
so.
okay, it's fine. We won't post it, Mallory. We'll just make sure that if three of
Okay.
us are there, somebody leaves. Okay. Makes me very sad, you know, I spent hours and hours on this bylaw. But sometimes you get blown out of the water. All right. The next order of business is the zone is the A&R plan. Is it Zamaro or Zamaro? And it's either right on the agenda or it's right on the email. It's spelled two different ways.
I just promoted Alex, so hold on 1 second.
I just want to get it correct. It'll be on the plan. Wait a minute.
Come on.
Yes, it doesn't have a W on the end. It's Zamarro, Janine. And is Mr. Sazak here or anybody?
Yep, Mr. Zach is here. Alex is here.
Who's here? Oh, Alex, okay. Okay, Alex can speak on this and just tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I have looked at it for the board. I did have Bill look at it because I now run these by him because I tend to miss things. As you know from the lot, it's actually creating 3 lots out of 1 lot. And that was picked up by Mallory, who, you know, charged accordingly. And I don't know, in terms of our listening audience, this is a lot that's on Gardner Road, 68. It's near the dogwoods, but on the other side of the street. And I'll turn it over to Alex to present. I have checked though the checklist and it does meet all the criteria on our checklist. So Alex, you want to talk to us a little?
He's muted.
He's muted. Just tell us anything about the plan that we,
Here I am.
Hey,
yes,
Yeah, here I am. Okay, actually, it's the same side as Dogwoods, just before it.
oh, okay, sorry, mixed up.
Yeah, it's where the old, I think it used to be LaJoy Garage used to be.
Is that the garage shown on the plan?
Yes, you got it. Yep. And he's just splitting the property into 3 lots. One of the lots being the one with the garage on it, and then 2 vacant lots. That's pretty
Okay.
much.
I have one little picky thing to ask you.
What's it?
In the tiny little, because it's really tiny when you print it out, location on this,
Okay,
you still list Hybridge Road is intersecting with 68.
because on paper, it really does. But you can't drive there. But
Okay.
on paper, it really is. Yes.
Okay, all right, so, I don't know, I'm open to other questions by anybody. He does have the enough upland, he's got all of the criteria that's on our checklist. And we got a lot of stuff to do tonight, so if you'll take my word for it, Bill's also looked at it. I think we could vote to approve it. And then, again, since we're virtual, you guys have to all get down with the three of us, especially where there's only three of us voting. We all have to get down, you know, to Mallory's office and get it and put our ink signature on it. So I'm gonna make a,
Yeah, Madam Chair, this will present a problem for me, as you know.
oh dear.
So the only thing I can do is I am actually flying back to Boston on Monday. So unless this is required immediately, I will be there for a short period of time, and I do plan to be in Hubbardston 26th, 27th of this month. And as long as the petitioner is okay with this delay, because the only other alternative here is to present this in the next public
Right. The
meeting
26th
we
is
have.
Wednesday,
I know that.
right?
And so the
Okay.
26th or the 27th,
So
I
next,
do have-
next week.
yes, and my apologies.
That's fine.
I'm out of state right now, and I'm taking the red eye on Monday, and I will be in Boston for, Boston, Massachusetts, I should say, for a few weeks.
That's fine.
I do see another hand up from Bill Murray.
So if the board votes to approve, you don't need all the voters to sign because it's an administrative action of the planning board. So other members of the board could sign simply as an action of the planning board.
Correct. I was going to
Oh.
mention that too, but as I
Okay.
said, if you do not get anybody else, I am happy to do so, but the earliest I can be in Mallory's office probably would be either Wednesday the 26th or Thursday the 27th.
Okay, so Mallory, you can send a note out to the other members.
Okay.
Saying that they can sign even though they didn't attend
Okay.
tonight's meeting under an administrative provision. And that comes from Bill, so they know it's, you know, he's looked it up. or
It's
whatever.
legit.
Making it up.
They-
It's
Okay.
legit.
They may choose not to.
Has
It's
the other
legit.
thing- Oh, so we do need the vote, but I want to ask Mallory also, has the other,
No, I still
Mylar
need one. I still need one more signature on that one.
you still need one more signature on that one, you say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Again, I can do it, but the earliest I can do it is next
Now you
week.
can. All right, can you also send the other board members the note?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were notified.
Oh, yeah, multiple times,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Mallory, you would have to let me know.
Of course, yeah. I'm not planning on going anywhere next week, so,
Okay, I asked because I know that you have some things scheduled.
yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Madam Chair, do we go ahead and just, I know it does not require an approval other than just the signature, correct?
No, well, Bill says we need to vote to approve it. Right?
Endorse it.
Correct. So vote to approve. You want to make
Okay,
that?
yeah.
You
motion?
have to make a motion and
Yes,
vote.
yes,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. You're right. So at this point in time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to present a motion that we approve the A&R as submitted by Alex Zoc on behalf of the petitioners for, and I do not remember the exact address,
Gardner Road.
Gardner Road.
Second,
Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Steiger, yes.
Monroe, yes.
And Alice Livedall, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So Mallory
Thank-
just asked that if you do not get all the signatures by the time the 25th rolls by, please reach
got
out
it.
to me. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
thanks, Mallory. Thanks, everyone. And it's nice to, that you'll work with us on this. Alex, so,
Yes.
okay, moving on to the next thing. Anything else you want to say? No. On this plan, I think we're ready to move on. New business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have, before we do new business, is Nicole Wineland Fisher here? And Gregory
Yeah,
Fisher?
you have Allison Muirhead and I think it's Sally Mann, who's the real estate agent, so I can promote them both to panelists. If you want
Okay,
to.
but this letter, I try not to keep people waiting. I'm trying to
Yeah.
explain. to
No,
the
I
board.
think they're both here for this item.
But this, if the people that promote, that I know both parties are interested in 28 George Howard Road, but it's Nicole Wineland, Thompson Fisher, and Gregory Fisher that promoted the country club, right?
Right, and their representative is here because she emailed and said she might be in labor and that Sally would speak on her behalf.
Okay, so the person, okay. I'm just gonna go ahead with the article and then they can comment afterwards, okay?
Okay,
Unless there's an objection from the board taking it out of order. So this is actually old business and not new business, and that's why it's out of order. But the background again for the public is there's this large parcel of land for sale at 28 George Howard Road. It's like 300 acres, of which 200 more or less is DCR restricted through the sale of development rights. But there's a couple of proposals, and actually the Nicole Wineland, Thompson Fisher, and Gregory Fisher came to us, I don't know, probably 6 weeks ago or more, a little bit more than that perhaps, and talked about their proposal and asked if they could fit within the country club exception, or the country club, which is allowed in agricultural residential districts with a special permit. But what they were proposing at the time was an event facility. And why we didn't rule on it, we referred it to town council, and then they came back and they revised their whole business plan. So the business plan, they submitted to town council. I don't know whether he's here tonight or not. Jeffrey Blake. Anyway,
no,
works for our town council is KP Law, and he's one of their attorneys. So we sent that whole new, I sent that whole new description off to him, asking him for advice on whether it could fit within the definition of a country club. And this was, and in the meantime, they had applied for a special permit for a country club, but it wasn't complete and we didn't accept it. But at least it showed their sincere interest in this to send it to town council. Anyway, so with their new description, which the public should maybe be aware of, which the people on the board are, they were offering to use the property to offer, quote, a series of activities and experiences weekly and monthly with examples such as guided walks for naturalists, ornithologists, clay pigeon shooting, yoga, archery, mountain biking, night experiences with an expert astronomer, horseback riding through the groomed trails, canoeing, kayaking, cross-country skiing in the winter, and bringing experts in whenever possible. These activities would be organized and posted so members could sign up for the experience that interests them. Then it says they also envision school trips. Then they also are planning to build and install an in-ground swimming pool, which would be accessible to their club members. The name of their club they're proposing is Willow Hill. And then it says, in addition to the recreational experience, there will be a quarterly social dinners provided by Willow Hill for members. And then they go on to talk about the membership structure. And they said they would charge an annual membership fee. They're considering this fee to be about $3,000 a year for like a family of four members within one party is how they put it, and $500 for additional members. And members then would have the option of also renting the facility for personal events. So that is, I mean, there's a little more detail, you have it, but I think the public's entitled to know that. So that's what I sent to town council. He was here actually and met them and heard the description as well. And he wrote back an opinion in which he says, in interpreting undefined terms in the bylaw, the courts have advised that, quote, the terms used in the zoning bylaw are to be read in the context of the bylaw as a whole, and to the extent consistent with common sense and practicality, they should be given their ordinary meaning. So, and then it says also, he goes on, he quotes that case law, and then he says, if the board's interpretation of its bylaw is reasonable, the courts may not substitute their judgment. And then he goes on and he cites Merriam-Webster's version of what Merriam-Webster dictionary's definition of a country club, which is a suburban club for social life and recreation. And the Oxford English Dictionary, who has a definition of a club with sporting and social facilities set in a suburban area. And then this is more to question that Christopher raised. Merriam-Webster defines a club as an association of persons for some common object, usually jointly supported and meeting periodically. So he concludes in his opinion, he says, therefore, in my opinion, it would be reasonable but not mandatory for the board to conclude that the proposed project meets the common definition of country club. I base my opinion in part on the proposed activities, but also on the fact that there is a membership structure that is provided on an annual basis, and the club is not simply open to all members of the public, which would transform the project into merely a retail operation. So it says this opinion is based on the current and proposed project. However, any changes or alterations in the proposal could change my opinion. So then he signs off on that, and he says it is reasonable but not mandatory, right? So sometimes you get advice from council and they say you have to do this. He's not saying that. He's saying it's reasonable but not mandatory. So I think where we need to go tonight, and we can do discussion, but I think the end result is to vote to accept town council's opinion that it could qualify as a country club, which would allow them to reapply for a special permit. I mean, I'm not opposed to their amending the old permit, but one or the other, it has to be accepted before it starts the clock. But it would clear the way for that, because they're clearly, with such a big project, going to be spending thousands on, on site plans and so forth. So that's it. Discussions from the board, and then we'll see what people want to do. Do we have members of the public that want to speak?
Bill has his hand up.
Bill?
I don't think that the board has made a motion to formally not accept the special permit application. I think you need to formally reject it as being incomplete by a motion and a vote. If
I
that
did.
I think we did that last time,
did you?
Bill. Yes. Sir.
Okay, I missed
You
that.
you brought it up, and we took action on that.
We
Okay,
voted not to accept it because it was incomplete.
Yes.
Okay, so is there anyone else that wants to speak aside from the board to go first? Mallory?
No hands up.
No hands up. Okay.
Sally Mann just commented she can't speak, her mic's not working. My understanding, they were waiting for an opinion from the town on the definition of a country club prior to submitting the application for the special permit. Thank you.
Okay, and I did provide a copy of this opinion to them,
You did, yeah.
which also arrived late last week. And then I couldn't get hold of Mallory, but I did copy her on it and had her post it. So, I mean, there's also, we don't have to do this tonight with 3 of us here, but if you feel that we can do it, be willing to take a vote on it.
So,
That issue.
Madam Chair, if I may, I spent a lot of time looking into this issue when it first came up, and town council's opinion, I believe, is reasonable. There are some things where the details are going to matter, and what actually goes into the special permit is going to make a difference, like the way the activities are proposed and the actual ownership structure and those things. And we can't make a decision on the validity of any of those things. And all we can say is, yeah, in this particular snapshot that town council looked at, yeah, I think town council came to a reasonable opinion. But like we've seen with the last few special permits that have come through, things change in these projects. And as much as this is reasonable, I'm willing to say it's reasonable, but that I want to make it perfectly clear that that's not just a green light on its own, and that yes, we would definitely consider this opinion, but it's based upon these very specific facts in this opinion, and itself is not dispositive on the entire issue of the special permit.
So you can think about it and be the motion maker. But I was thinking in terms of saying we accept town council's opinion that it would be reasonable for the board to conclude that the project meets the combination definition of a country club.
As defined by the town council.
Well, if we say we accept his opinion, that's
Correct. But
That's
I
it,
think what we're making sure here is it has to be very, okay, I agree with you. I think what we are saying here is that the potential petitioner has to be very cognizant of the fact that this is a very, very, very bounded opinion based on the definition that was given there. And yes, I do agree. What we're doing here is we're voting on this here, but I think what we're also specifying here is that the petitioner needs to be very, very careful that what they are going to be proposing has to kind of be within those guardrails, and any deviation potentially will veer this off.
could open that
That's-
question again, right?
Exactly. That's what I heard from Christopher, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a fair summary.
Okay. So I don't think we need to put that as part of the motion. I think what we just need to make sure is, and we can put this as part of the conversation afterwards. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill, yeah.
You don't need to take a vote on this. You are under no obligation to take a vote.
Yeah.
You can say it is the inclination of the planning board to accept town council's opinion, given the situation as we know it, but there is nothing in front of you that's a formal application.
Correct.
And I think you bind yourself unnecessarily by making a vote. I know you green light to the people and you give them a good feeling, but you have no obligation here.
My only concern is I think there's an element of fairness in this. I mean, this will be ongoing when the elections occur, right? And some of us may not be the same board. So I think if our board votes to just support the opinion, that we agree with the opinion, it does send a signal to the next, it sets that groundwork. That basically, if they present, a special permit that fills this in, their proposal in a consistent way, and it meets all the rest of the criteria, site plan, everything else, that we won't throw it out because it's not a country club.
But
That's
you
the
can't
concern.
make that promise because it is a new board after elections anyway. And it is a completely new, it's got to be a refreshed presentation. And while you can attempt to prejudice the new board, it's their decision, not the current board's. So I personally don't think that I think saying that it is the inclination of 3 members of the board, because you are missing members, and that's pivotal because this is a special permit and they need a supermajority, number one.
Yes.
And I think that you can say it is the informal inclination of the board to honor the opinion of town council, but I really think that if you vote, then you are prejudicing yourself in case of a future appeal. You're boxing yourself in. I understand the fair play part, because they asked in good faith, is this something we can do? I honestly don't think 3 members of the board should be answering that question when a supermajority is required to ultimately answer the question. And as I said, you're not obligated to make a motion or a vote, and I'll be quiet from this point forward.
If I may, Madam Chair, and I hear Bill's point. I have a tendency to think very like he has presented in a likewise manner. I also want to press on the fact that last year, prior to the elections, we made every effort possible to complete the special permits that were ongoing at that point in time, because we did know that there was a possibility that other members would be joining this board. Didn't happen, but as a result of that, we had some concerns that new members might derail those special permits. So I think we need to be flexible about the fact that a new board may want to look at this here fresh. I'm assuming again that if this special permit can happen in a timely manner prior to the elections, then there is potentially no reason for this to be concluded in the same manner. But I tend to agree with Bill. We ask for a legal opinion, we receive the legal opinion, we can present the legal opinion to the applicant and have them review it and understand that. I mean, I think a reasonable board would always look at the opinion of the town council and use that as their guidance.
Okay, we have a petitioner saying when is the election? The election is right the next week after town meeting, right?
Yes.
The mid-June.
Right.
But I think that's also important for, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. Because I know Nicole's in labor, right? So
Sally.
she can represent, what is it?
Sally.
Sally. So the other point that Bill Murray, who's our consultant, professional consultant, raises is that in order to get a special permit, you must get 4 out of the 5 members of the board's vote, right? So it's a supermajority, that's the requirement. And then if somebody is disqualified, that's why we have an alternate who will sit and listen to it. So even if we were to say, we were to accept this opinion as the 3 of us, it wouldn't bind the rest of the members that aren't here to anything, because they're going to have to ultimately vote on the special permit in order for it to pass. At least one more person that's not here would have to cast their vote. So, you know, I've given you that opinion. It's absolutely, if we do nothing, we can absolutely tear it into little pits and throw it away. And it's, you know, well, we don't agree with town council. So I don't know how far that gets you in terms of any confidence level to submit this application. But I think the 3 members here are inclined to respect that opinion. So, I mean, I don't know, Bill's advising no action whatsoever, right?
No, I think what you just did is, or you could do a straw vote to say it's the casual opinion of the board that's not binding. But I don't think a formal motion and a vote of the board is appropriate at this point in time.
Okay,
I
so,
think we can voice, I think what I'm hearing here is we can voice whether or not individual members of this particular meeting who are board members agree with what we are reading from the opinion of KP Law. Right?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I tend to listen to my attorneys. I mean, one of the reasons we did go to them was to get that opinion.
Yeah.
And I think from that perspective, it was well written. It has good broad review and detailed review. The only thing, and I was just thinking about this here, I don't know if Hubbardston is considered a suburban area. I think we're more rural. Other than that, that's maybe the only question that I would have in the description of this particular setting. But other than that, personally, I think that what I am reading there makes sense, and it's certainly something that I would use as a guide. I don't know if you, Madam Chair, or my partner on this board, Christopher Monroe, would like to provide their input also.
So my thoughts on that. So when I looked at this, I actually looked at a few different cases than town council had looked at. There were actually cases where neighbors were coming back and were attacking it, and in that there was a focus really on the word club, and I think that's one of the key issues here. But town council addresses that in there, and I believe it's currently addressed in the application. As far as the suburban context of it, when the zoning bylaw was put into place, I don't think that the idea of whether we were suburban or rural was something that was being contemplated by either ourselves or the town people, because it does appear in our zoning. We wouldn't have something in, at least it wouldn't make sense, just looking at kind of the way it's constructed, to have a particular use that you can't use because you don't fall into that type of community. So I think we have to look at it as an envisioned use from that standpoint.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't know where to go from here. I guess what we could do is all that I did was forward the email from Jeff Blake to Nicole. We could send a copy, snail mail on our letterhead saying this is a, formal copy of the opinion we received and we reviewed it tonight. And the 3 members present were supportive of the decision. I don't know.
Alice, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying you cannot make a motion and a vote. I'm just simply saying, I don't believe you should. If it is the pleasure of the board to do so, that's your right.
Yeah, I do think it's 3 out of 4. What was the other? Do you want to do just an informal straw vote that, as he suggested, that based on that the opinion appears to be reasonable to the 3 of us present tonight?
I think you've already relayed that to the applicant, but
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too.
Okay,
I think so
okay,
too. We've done this
Okay.
here by providing our inputs.
okay. All right, so we'll go on to the next item and you'll pass that along to the applicant, to the would-be applicant.
The answer is yes.
Yes, she says, yes. All right, okay, so on to the next meeting. I do think she should have a formal copy of the decision with an accompanying letter, even if it says, here's the copy of the decision. So I'll make sure they do that. Because it was just a late thing Thursday night. I couldn't reach Mallory and I just sent it off to her. Okay.
Madam
Next.
Chair, just, and I know it's semantics, it's an opinion, not a decision.
Right.
Just as a clarification.
Did I say decision?
Yes,
Opinion. I'll be very careful. Yeah, opinion.
a couple times.
A couple times. All right. I don't think I would make that in writing. Okay. All right, so on to the next item, which is the annual report. Everybody get a chance to read the annual report? It was great. Mallory put it together. And all I did was, in editing it, was sort of reorganize the list of things we do. I think that was taken from last year.
Yeah.
And I moved tried to move where the Affordable Housing Committee up towards the top. So it's not so much, doesn't appear to be an afterthought at the bottom of the list. But are there any more corrections? I had a couple of changes, Mallory, and maybe other people do too, that are just at the end. I don't know. I had put this in last year and we can skip the whole thing if you want. But there was a section, the very last section says, many members of the planning board also serve on boards and commissions for the town of Hubbardston. And then we list them. I think for one thing, it should say boards and committees. I don't know, we have some commissions too, I guess, but I don't think any of us serve on commissions. So boards and committees. And then this list Christopher's these are also then all listed as their acronyms, which is maybe okay. It lists Christopher as being on it's ARPA, right? It's not 2 R's?
I
Or is
believe
it
so.
2 R's? So ARPA, and I'm on, it lists me as on MJ, I was a CPC, but I'm also on a couple of others, MRPC, I'm the delegate, and the MJTC. And Wait a minute, are you listed twice? You're listed twice on this. So somebody's not listed. No. Maybe other people just don't have assignments. Francois is the CIPC, is that the correct acronym? For your,
Yes, confirming CIPC.
okay,
Capital-
and then Bill is ZBA. So John isn't on anything, is that right? Maybe he isn't, I don't remember. But Christopher is also on the EDC. You have his name listed twice,
Okay,
And it's listed as EDIC in the
and
document.
it's just EDC. So I think that maybe that's a good thing to leave that on, because it does show we work beyond just our own little borders, right? We're members of other committees. So why don't we do that, unless there's anybody objects? Change commissions to committees and fix up the little acronyms, but I don't think you need to spell them all out. People can
okay.
look them up if they want. And then we have, we list Erica at the end. Did I spell her name right? Is it CK?
CK, yeah, I fixed that.
Yeah, if you fixed it, okay. So, any other issues? I don't think we need to take a formal vote to approve it. We just need to be aware of it, that we're filing it.
Can I just, on the zoning bylaws, I
Yep.
see again, the Article 6 rate of development was extended for 1 year and as being revised. I think we just need to also indicate that it was approved by the town meeting. I do know that since then it has been, we don't need to indicate anything other than that, but we do need to indicate that this was approved by the annual town meeting.
I'm trying to figure out where that is.
Zoning bylaw review and revision under affordable housing. I'm sorry, the next section immediately after affordable housing.
Oh, okay. Revised and approved at annual town meeting. Add that same language. to
Was
that,
extended
Mallory.
by 1 year, was extended by 1 year as approved at the annual
And
town meeting.
approved at annual town meeting.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Can you do that, Mallory? You can leave out the as and is being revised, scratch that out and just add what you did in the one above it.
Yep.
And approved it and add a commercial marijuana, what is amended at a special town meeting. And you can say and approved there too, right? Let's see how you would word that to be just so it reads the same. The commercial marijuana establishment bylaw, you should put in, right? Bylaw was amended and approved by voters at a special town meeting.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I do not remember, when did we also, oh, that was, I'm sorry, no, I apologize, that's not the zoning bylaw, it was the general bylaw I'm thinking about. Thank you.
Right.
Apologize. And we're
Okay,
thinking of
and-
something else.
Once again, Mallory, also on this, so I'm looking at this sign by law, that sign by law, I'm asking for a clarification letter that the AG meant to accept that one. It is clearly written, if you read it, that they did accept it.
mhm,
It's just the confusion in the way it was worded.
Yeah.
So if you can tell Mallory, because one of my big things that I actually do want to wrap up before the year, my term is up here, is to get the revised bylaws done, you know, the revisions. So that is in the revised bylaws and the rate of development would be out of it, right? Can you tell her that?
Yep.
That's, okay. So then the next thing is actually the best bylaw update. And I think it's come a long way, but there's still questions. But I'll let Francois take the lead on it. There's this.
I saw your comments. I'm willing and happy to, I'm happy and willing to meet with you on these and review some of the items specifically that you have mentioned. Bill, and I do apologize. I've had some difficulties with regards to my time and work. I did send a a comment back to your revision. And that was sent out to you yesterday. I do not know if you have some comments on top of those or if there's any concerns or questions that you would like to address now, or maybe even separately via email.
I think the three-way communication that Alice suggested might take us a little further, or because she's adding comments in where I did not,
I understand,
on
yes.
topics I did not.
I just wanted to address those that were brought up by you because you did some significant amount of review of this here. And much appreciated, by the way.
No, I'd rather take it and, you know, take it to the punching bag in one fell swoop, if you will.
Ouch.
I think we need to be cognizant that the warrant closes April 11th. We got to get a hearing in, and we got to hustle on this if we're going to get it
Right.
through. But I do think there's some things that maybe we could take a minute tonight and just discuss with the three people that are here that are sort of, to my way of thinking, pretty fundamental and not something that the three of us meeting would necessarily resolve. One of them is do we want a minimal lot size for these installations? Because the way it's written presently is the setbacks must be honored, but you wouldn't actually need the 200 feet frontage because that's only a minimum lot size for houses, right? And this wouldn't be a house. So, no, Bill's saying no.
That's the minimum lot size for, there is
Anything?
no smaller lot in Hubbardston. So the minimum lot size for any lot in Hubbardston, unless it's grandfathered, is the 200 feet, 2 acres.
Okay, that's not just houses.
No,
Okay, so then is that a size that on the larger, the tier 2, it's basically the only thing that can be sited on that lot, right?
So this applies for tier 2. This bylaw is applicable to tier 2.
I don't think that was the question.
I'm sorry, then I did not understand your question.
There's two kinds of tier 2s. The one where the system is being used to produce what's being produced on that lot, right?
No, there's
It's
two
not-
tiers. There's a tier 1, which is a non-grid scale battery energy
Right.
storage system. And then there's a second tier, which is the tier 2, which is a grid scale battery energy storage system. They are basically, the threshold that divides the two is less than or equal to 600 kilowatt hours, which is for tier 1, typically utilized mostly by homeowners or private enterprises, and they would typically use these for their own storage of electricity, and then be able to consume that electricity at off-peak hours. Can it be integrated into the grid? Yes, but it's not what is, I'm sorry, can it be integrated into the power system? Yes, but it's not grid scale. Grid scale is really something that goes into the very larger part of the grid and can power potentially a larger section of a town or a community. And that would be the 600 kilowatt hour or more.
So what is a participating and non-participating? What's the distinction there? I thought non-participating would be, you could still have a tier 2, it would just be non-participating. It would just fuel whatever was.
Can
being
you
developed.
point to the section that you're mentioning here?
It's the definitions.
Located on a participating property?
Right, are all, on a non-participating property, are they all just tier 1?
Okay, now I understand where your question is. Okay, so it goes back to the original tier 1. So where it says it's located on participating property and non-participating property. Basically, it could be in properties that are, so non-grid scale battery energy storage system can be located in a participating property, participating property and non-participating property, and are
Right.
intended solely for the use of non-participating property. So that would therefore indicate that they're not participating in a grid scale battery energy storage system network.
But they could still be over 600 kilowatts, megawatts, whatever it is, kilowatts.
No, they would be under 600 kilowatt hour.
Okay, so this bylaw isn't regulating anything under 600,
It is not.
is not. Okay, so my question to you is that because, I mean, the reason we don't, for example, regulate solar field, marijuana fields under a certain size is because it's as of right, right? So are we considering anything under 600 kilowatt, the tier 1 as of right? Is that why we're not regulating it?
No, it's a tricky question because, I mean, the town really is regulating pretty much anything that is by right, right? So you could, and I mean, I'm leaving this here I'm asking for your interpretation too, because I mean, the town bylaws pretty much say anything that is by right. What we know at this point in time is that the grid scale battery energy storage system is definitely not by right. And what this bylaw does, it basically opens it opens the door for a grid scale battery energy storage system to be located in the town of Hubbardston.
I do get that. I just think that.
Now, there are people, and if I may just conclude here for a second, there are people or folks in town who may have a Tesla, or they may have, say, for example, a solar, some solar panels on their roof, and that solar panel is producing electricity during the day when they are not at home, but they could theoretically add a battery that is like the Tesla batteries or some other companies that are available to provide that service. And that battery then being charged during the day, they can consume that electricity during the time when they're back home. Say, for example, at nighttime. Again, now with COVID, it's a different situation.
That's not regulated generally. I mean, it might be regulated in electrical code.
Exactly. It may be regulated by electrical code, but it is not regulated that I am aware of anything other than that.
Okay, so that's our intention.
Okay, and the intention here is really to incorporate and include in this bylaw the tier 2 grid scale battery energy storage system.
Okay, I agree with you. There are parallels in the solar bylaw where we say this is only large scale. So basically we're following that pattern. Large scale is 600. Okay, so then how big can a tier 2 system, how many of these 600 kilowatt units are we going to allow in a tier 2? A tier 2 is everything 600 and above, right?
That is, it's
And
600 kilowatt hour plus.
1,000 kilowatt hours. I mean, don't we have to cap it at the top? You know what I mean?
Do we cap? How do we cap the solar panels?
We're
Or
going to if we ever get that grant.
I'm just saying is we got
It's going to be a 5 acre, however many you could fit without clear cutting and all kinds of regulations. It's going to be capped.
I mean, we can suggest, say, for example, 10 megawatt maximum. But I mean, right now, again, I want to be very careful with this here. And the reason is because the technology has changed. And as we know, as we have seen, and this applies also with regards to the solar photovoltaic fields. As the technology improves, you can get a lot more solar absorption that converts into electricity in a smaller square footage. And so as a result of that, within the existing acreage, in theory, should be able to produce more electricity. And the same thing could be said with the technology that is evolving in the battery area, which is evolving very fast. I mean, right now we do have lead acid batteries, but we also have sodium batteries, and there's also lithium batteries, and there is a new very interesting movement is happening, which is what is called solid state batteries. Which are coming in, and they're highly efficient, but more importantly, they pack a lot more energy in a smaller amount of volume and space.
Well, here's what I'm thinking of. My only experience with this, and I know you're dealing with a Luddite here, right, with this, but is the 147 field, right? And I don't know how many kilowatt hours their units store. Do you remember, Bill?
I don't know.
But my impression was, and I could look it up, is that the basic unit is that they had, I don't know, 4 of them, 5 of them, were the size of like a shipping container. So I'm thinking in my mind, a shipping container is 600 kilowatt hours of whatever the technology today is that they're using over on 147, right?
No, that No, that's like just a portion of the shipping container.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, a shipping container is the size of a shipping container would be close to the megawatt, I think.
Correct.
But
Well, what did, that's,
just keep in mind that it is the electric company that's going to put a cap on this.
Mhm.
Because they can only contribute X amount of energy through the lines and service all their customers before the battery system starts drawing away from customers. And likewise, they can't discharge too much because then they'll exceed the capacity of the line, et cetera, et cetera. So that there's the electric company is going to put the cap on the size of the system based
Correct.
upon their infrastructure.
That is correct.
all right, but
Especially in the town of Hubbardston, where we do not have large transmission lines. These lines, for example, these proposed battery energy storage systems in the town of Hubbardston would be utilized to provide a backup electricity, or even what they call the evening of current and evening of phase for a town. And by so doing, it would be much more of a regional impact that it has, which is valuable to a utility. But it's different than, for example, the model that we saw in Athol, where they're looking at it from the transmission line perspective, and they have some big transmission lines that go through their town.
But Francois, I don't think that this addresses the possibility that a commercial user may take this to shave their own peak and not sell back to the grid.
That is already available through the tier 1.
Yeah, but if you have a big commercial user, a big electrical user, and they may want to, store through the night and utilize their battery power to run their equipment to shave the peak during the day, and that would be a commercial user more than the 600.
Yeah, let's remember that this is Hubbardston, right? We're not Gardner, we're not Worcester, Leominster, places like that.
Well, that's today.
No, I'm glad you have that vision, and that's great.
It should be accommodated, is all I'm saying.
Correct, but again, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that this is in a limited area where you have to have not only phase 3 electricity, and it has to be in the commercial zone. So that by itself, if you recall, the area that is currently under consideration for this year, and this goes in line with another comment that you made, Alice, or Madam Chair, I'm sorry, is the fact that I'm not opposed to and I'm happy to entertain an overlay district, but I believe that the current situation, and potentially even future places where this could be located, would be limited to commercially zoned areas, and number 2, areas where there's 3-phase electricity, because that is a requirement in order to be able to place these systems.
so it's 3-phase electricity within a commercial zone.
That is correct.
Yeah, both those things.
And if you recall, the maps that I sent to you, Alice, and also to Bill,
Yeah, I remember.
very clearly show that at least at this point in time, and potentially for the near future, are quite limiting as to where this could happen.
Okay,
I
but
just think a marijuana user could all of a sudden decide he's going to be an up tier, and he's going to off-peak store and then power up lights overnight or something like that. I can see a commercial user storing power for his own consumption and not selling it back to the grid.
So again, I think what we need to look at here is how there's a difference between a battery energy storage system that serves the grid,
right,
versus a battery energy storage system that provides a service for a commercial or even a residential user who is also taking advantage of the fact that, yes, they may have the opportunity to sell back to the grid, like, for example, the rooftop solars do, right? So if, and I'm just making this up, so let's take, for example, the gas station in town. If they decide to put those solar panels on top of their their location, or even the chicken, our chicken farm facility. They decide to put these solar panels up, and if they decide not to store that energy and sell it to the sell during the day to the grid, they can absolutely do it, and any surplus. I think there's some economies that need to be looked at, because there's some regulations in terms of how much you can actually sell back. The only concern that I'm bringing up here is how do we frame this here without making this a onerous situation for a business who's utilizing it for their own purpose, and taking advantage of the fact that, yes, they have surplus electricity during the day, and they can store it and utilize it during the night, or sell it during the day completely and then repurchase it back at night, and therefore even out on their cost. This really truly is purpose for what is known as grid scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the purpose of this bylaw. Very similar to the photovoltaic, large scale photovoltaic, which are really intended for the purposes of providing energy, electric energy, to the grid.
What's
question?
Yeah, what's the concern about some of those commercial users potentially doing that? Is there a reason it wouldn't be something we would want to encourage?
No, I don't think there is. At least from my perspective, there is not. The question I think here is do we have to include something here in the bylaw for this year, or does this mean that we have to regulate it potentially differently under a tier 1?
This goes along with that, to Christopher's question. If we limit this to the commercial zone, Christopher, the country hen isn't in that zone, the marijuana fields, they're all residential agriculture zone, right? So we're prohibiting tier 2s in every corner of the town except commercial and the solar fields. So it's definitely a big rewrite if you're going to allow the plus 600, the tier 2s in the residential agriculture zones, right? Am I right?
The
Yeah.
thought with that, though, is systems like this are most useful where the people are using the power. So if there are parts that are underserved, I don't know if that's something that we could even get a comment from the electric company on where would this be useful to you, just so we're not writing a bylaw that kind of shuts out where really the need is.
Well, no, the way this, I mean, for example, the town of Hubbardston has different feeders. The one feeder that can potentially take advantage of this is actually fed all the way from Westminster. Comes into Gardner, goes all the way down to 62, then crosses through High Street, down again into the center of town, and then I think it meanders its way down 68, but not completely down 68 towards Rutland. I think it probably makes its way up to Elm Street. And then there's other feeders that come in, I believe one from Barrie, and there's another one that comes in south from somewhere in the Holden area. There's multiple phase 3 electricity sources that come into town, which are the big power sources that come into town. So at this point in time, based on where we are and based on the way that we have the commercial district layout, we have an opportunity to offer a battery energy storage system, grid scale battery energy storage system in one very specific tranche of this year. Now, in the future, say for example, commercial districts do open up in some of these other tranches where 3-phase electricity flows in. Absolutely, there's a possibility for that too. As a matter of fact, it would already be happening also by virtue of the fact that where most of these solar fields exist, the ones very specifically on Williamsville Road, I believe those are all interconnected with the Barrie system, and that would be served. That is already served by the battery energy storage system there. And so think of it as anyone who's on Williamsville Road or any arteries or yeah, arteries coming out of Williamsville Road could theoretically be receiving energy power that comes out of the battery energy storage system at nighttime, as an example.
You don't think though that like, I don't know, the chicken farm, I'm thinking of the marijuana farmer. We don't, everything's linked, but if you allowed bigger marijuana farms, there's no enterprises that are that are standalone that would like to put up their own solar panels and store that energy. I mean,
Yes, I mean that is absolutely something that they can do, but how is that? My question here is this here: how is that different from a gas station doing the same, or myself doing it on my home and storing that and then utilizing that electricity during the nighttime?
as long as it's under 600K, right?
Which is a lot.
Kilowatt. Okay, all right.
Which is
See,
a
that's-
lot.
All right, all right.
Significant amount of power.
So as we draft this, this is related to, it would only be allowed, you got the 2-acre minimum lots.
Mhm.
It'd only be allowed in the commercially zoned areas that have 3-phase power. So it'd be commercial zone. I'm thinking of it as a zoning bylaw.
Correct.
And it would only be for participating parcels defined as those feeding the power grid.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay.
And that's why I'm saying it's silent on non-participating parcels. I think they need to be addressed. That's all I'm saying.
So non-participating parcels being those that are not.
Being those that produce more than 600 kilowatt hours, but are not.
But aren't
feeding the
selling
grid.
back to the grid. We just need to address that in the bylaw to say that it's an allowed use subject to this bylaw
Which means it would also have to be in the commercial district
and a special permit. Yeah.
and a
But
special permit.
if
Okay,
it's
I
gonna
just
be-
trying to understand. I'm not trying to judge.
I
do
understand
think
that that's perhaps not reality today, but it's a potentiality, and I think it should be addressed in the bylaw today to make it reviewable. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I don't have any problem with that. I'm just trying to understand it. I do think there should be a cap though. Personally, I do. Because,
Well,
I mean,
think
maybe
we
that's
need
just
to,
unrealistic, but why not have it's like we don't want the 100,000 square foot marijuana fields. Just seems it's sensible to me to have a cap, no? We are gonna
So-
cap. Maybe the cap would be not over, I don't know what's reasonable, 2,400 kilowatt hours on a 2-acre parcel? And then scale it up?
So
I think-
when we did the first version of this, the split between the tiers really stuck out at me. And the reason for that is because right now, like a Tesla Powerwall is 13 13 kilowatt hours. But there's people who are currently putting together projects that are going to be on the market soon that are going to be up to 100. And putting together a law that's going to have longevity that we can look at confidently and say, yeah, this is still going to make sense. That's part of why that jump to the tier that gets regulated goes all the way up to 6, because it's almost 6 times what is currently pragmatic for what somebody's going to put in the house. But energy density for batteries is increasing like crazy.
Dramatically.
It's I don't remember what the statistic is, but it has a similar rule to Moore's law, where
Mhm.
there's just a curve of an increasing energy density. So if we were to put a limit now, it could be something that could be just, unless we were to do something similar like the 600 is, where yeah, we pick a limit, but we end up multiplying it by 6 or so to accommodate for the growth of energy density and the change of technology.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody, we're talking about kilowatt hours, right? And that is, in 1 hour, you can You can store or expend up to 600 kilowatt. A regular standard home typically ranges anywhere between 1 to 3 kilowatt hours here in the Northeast, and that also depends obviously on the season, spring versus fall, and then summer versus winter.
1 to 3 kilowatt hours a day.
No, kilowatt hours, right? At any given instant in time. So when you have your toaster on and you have your fridge on and all this stuff, you're typically consuming anywhere between 1 to 3 kilowatt hours. So if you look at your electric bill sums up all of the kilowatt hours that you've consumed, and at some point in time it adds them up and says, oh, okay, here's your bill. And yes,
Right.
you may end up having consumed as a single consumer 600 kilowatt hours in a month, which is ridiculously high, but yeah, but it's over a 30-day period, 24 hours a day times 30 days.
That's
On
helpful.
average, exactly.
Yep.
So
Yep.
this, what we're saying here is this is typically a storage unit that is used either as a backup, and it's typically used as a backup, I should say, and it's used as a backup in such a way that you can either provide a spurt of energy right off the bat that can say for example, supply energy for next half hour at a rate, if you have a megawatt hour facility, you would have potentially 2 hours worth of electricity at a megawatt that you're spending out over a very short period of time. And what you're doing here is you're helping the utility either balance out when, say for example, well, the wind farm suddenly had no wind, or we have a power surge coming in because of some crazy event that is happening. I mean, like for example, I don't know, Super Bowl, something of that nature.
Or 100-degree day.
100-degree day is a very, very good example. And we have that, as a matter of fact, in the utility business. There's what is known as sometimes backup generators that they have all stored up in so many different locations, which they kick in once, twice, or 3 times a year maximum. And the utilities are paying enormous amounts of money just to have them as backup so that they can even out these peaks without creating brownouts or even blackouts. And that's what the purpose is of this here.
So how big is, would you say that the building that's containing a 600 kilowatt?
It's probably about a half, I want to say, I mean, I want to say probably about a half a trailer at this point in time. But again, the way I look at this here is, and it's probably even less than that as time goes on, just by virtue of the fact that's what Christopher was saying. The energy density of these batteries is changing dramatically from year to year to year. You're getting a lot more kilowatt hours in a smaller amount of space.
So maybe like 5 by 10, it's like a shed size, sort of.
Potentially. Again, I don't want to be quoted on this here, but I mean, I have, again, it depends on the layout, the type of battery that you use. Say, for example, if you are using a lithium battery versus lead acid batteries, which some systems they do use lead acid batteries. Probably not the most efficient, but they can do that. And as they are moving into the solid state technologies, they will be compressed into smaller and smaller spaces. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I'm just looking up Borrego's, and they're doing a 7 megawatt. The last field,
Yeah,
147 Williamsville, was permitted as a 7 megawatt field. Now I'm trying to find what the battery was that they were approved for. And I don't know that we listed.
I think it was smaller than that.
Oh, it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a
Megawatt
1.
is 100 times a
1,000
kilowatt.
1,000 watts.
1,000 kilowatts.
So it would be, so that's like 600,000 of these.
If you do 1,000 kilowatt hours, you got a megawatt. As an example.
But that would be like 600 of these units.
Of the smaller.
Yeah, the smaller units.
No, because
No.
battery, I seem to recall the battery was something like a 1 or 1.5 megawatt, but that's what I'm trying to find.
I don't know. I'm just trying to, I really, really would like to do this because I do, but it has to make sense. And it's like, the average Hubbardston citizen is, not that much smarter than me. So we have to make them, we have to make it understandable. But
I'm
so
not
if it would
disagreeing.
if it would fill a shed and that's it, and that's all that would occupy the 2-acre parcel, because it's a single use. I mean, is that
No,
what
but
we're saying?
let's be realistic. I mean, the utilities are not going to, an investor who's going to work with this here, for example, they're not going to simply have a 600 kilowatt hour facility. They're probably going to be looking more at anywhere between 5 to 10 megawatts. And again, there may be larger facilities. There are certainly larger facilities in other locations. But in this particular case, I would assume that in a place like Hubbardston, based on the population that we have, based on the potential proximity that we have to Gardner and so forth, they might be looking at something easily of between 5 and 10 5 to 10 megawatt as an example, which would, I mean, if you take the example of one container being about 1 megawatt roughly, this would be up to 10 containers, and in the 10 megawatt case, or 5 containers in the 5 megawatt case.
So
Okay.
I think that there are two criteria that need to apply, if I may. One is, and it's kind of redundant regulation, is number one, we have to have a sign off from the utility company, which identifies the maximum load affecting the wires and the storage that
Correct.
that they are capable of receiving, either sending or receiving, number one. And number two, on a 2-acre lot, how many of these trailers do you think is reasonable?
Correct.
Especially since you can have an existing building on that lot. So
Right.
on a 2-acre lot, I would think that 2 or 3 of these trailer sized facilities you could hide and not intrude on offsets and everything else. But so that's just another way to look at it, is the physical footprint. And you could say that I don't know, you need to establish a criteria to say that you need greater acreage for greater storage.
But I mean, would you say, Bill, that is, again, that is a criteria that is set by the utility, because the utility will make a determination, A, on what they need, B, what is economically feasible, and C, what can, based on the existing technology, be sited at one of these locations.
I agree, but the world changes constantly, and this bylaw will be slow to change, so that we should anticipate that if somebody wants a 10 megawatt storage facility, we don't want them to put it on 2 acres. So that
Right.
we do want to say that there is a physical space threshold on a piece of property. That's all.
And I think also you need to have the cap. I mean, when I did the 147 Williamsville, which Francois was completely right about, it should have been regulated, and it really wasn't. It was kind of put
Thank
in
you.
there. I mean, in retrospect, right? But I didn't know that till I actually walked it with them. But they do have a very rare but very horrible explosive potential.
Well,
So you
I
could
want
have a
to,
2-acre lot that's only 100 feet wide, or, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Right.
let me address that. I mean, I understand that the fire chief went out there and they discussed this here and so forth. The lithium battery batteries have had that issue. It had to do primarily with the technology by which they were assembled and created. We even had the issue on airplanes, if you recall, some years ago. And so as a result of this here, there was enormous amounts of work that was done to bring them in line with fire hazard compliance. And so as a result of that, I mean, planes were grounded and so forth. And that has moved into the general technology when it comes to lithium-ion batteries. The other thing that we need to be very cognizant of the fact that lithium-ion batteries are just one of the technologies that can store electric energy. as I mentioned, I mean, the oldest ones that we have available are the lead acid batteries. So I think there are quite a few battery energy storage systems that do use them, probably some of the very older ones. And for some reason, maybe some of the newer ones do that too. There is also new technology that is coming about, which is, say, for example, the solid state technology, which is very interesting and very promising. I think from that perspective, we do have some safeguards that we are putting in place that have to do very specifically with the compliance that they have to abide by, very specifically with electrical regulation. That's one of the reasons that we had the gentleman who worked with Places and Associates and Bill Murray specifically to look into this here and include these regulations as having to abide by them. It's not that you can put just anything in there. They have to be regulated and they have to abide by what the regulations are.
Is there an agency that certifies them? You know, so you could say only XYZ certified
We do have-
battery.
that was incorporated in here as a matter of
Is
fact.
it in here? So, you know,
Yeah, it is
There's
now,
yeah, it's the National Fire Protection Association. As a matter of fact, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, 1-2018,
Rated
Chapter
battery.
52, etc. I mean, there
okay,
was
okay.
a lot of good work done by Bill and his associate on that.
Okay, well, we can't spend all night on this either, but
I
But-
agree.
You still need I think you still need basic zoning. How much size, how intrusive, how potentially dangerous. And therefore we need to address that because the fire chief was pretty pragmatic. He said, if this thing's gonna go, we're just gonna watch it. So if we're on a 2-acre site and we have a 1 megawatt battery, and we don't get to tell people, well, I agree that the National Fire Protection Code does, we don't get to tell them what type of battery they can use, I don't think. Because we're not experts at that.
That is true.
So we don't get to, comment on the safety, the reliability, other than it meets a code that we don't understand. But I'm still thinking that what Alice is saying is the simple bulk presence and public safety need to be incorporated in here
Yes.
in a layman's term.
and we also need with the setbacks, I don't know that the residential setbacks are the ones that should apply. I mean, we think to think about setbacks a little bit, right? And
Well, and
also,
Yeah,
The
line of
set-
sight, how it's going to affect property values, those kind of things.
right, and we can't have the 7-foot, remember, buildings are, setbacks apply to buildings, but they don't apply to fences generally. So we're gonna have that same problem that we did with Mr. Bracco, right? Is you're gonna have that huge 10, fence on his property line. We can't have that. Fences have to be back from the property line. And then
Yeah,
on the
so-
noise thing, I think the sound, I don't know what kind of sound these makes, but we cannot add a nuisance sound to a residential neighborhood. We can't. So it's got to say, whatever decibel rules, whatever you want to put in there, it's the burden of the people installing that it not be audible to surrounding residential properties. I just think that's really important. Nobody wants to have a hum or whatever they
Yeah.
do. So I think,
I think that was actually addressed by Bill in the sense that I think there's a section here, applicant must submit equipment and component manufacturer's noise rating to demonstrate compliance, and that any noise assessment for multiple components shall be assessed on the cumulative impact of the multiple components, right?
Right.
it needs to be understandable to the average zoning person, to layman.
Oh, well, what that one does is it says they need to hire an expert who needs to give us an impact analysis of the sound. That has to
Right,
be
but-
presented as part of the application.
But the standard the planning board is looking for is not audible to the neighborhood
But
or to the
I-
surrounding
I-
residential
I
property.
got to ask a question though. I mean, we do have, and I'm not disagreeing with regards to this here. What is audible, right? Conversation is audible, and I can talk on my piece of property. And I think and I apologize, I'm going to take myself off video because it's getting dark here and I look very horrible. I look awful here, my video here.
Yeah,
The
no,
point-
I don't say there isn't a standard. There has to be a standard for what generally is audible to the average human being. But the bylaw needs to be written in such a way that it says, shall not
Mhm.
be audible to residential houses in the vicinity. And then you can put what audible is defined as, and then put in your technical.
X amount of megahertz of noise. Yeah,
Right,
we can
exactly.
do a threshold.
Decibel.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
the decibel rating, we can actually work on that. So how would this be different from, say, for example, how we have other, I mean, do we have any other restrictions in town on, and I can look at the bylaw when it comes to noise, right?
Well, you can look at the community impact requirements because that's part of a special, I think that's Article 8.
Okay. And I think we have broad discretion in our, in a special permit, which is a subject to anyway, to
Right.
impose those things. And I think from that perspective, we do have a component in our, we have a piece in our arsenal to be able to decline or deny a special permit based on criteria that potentially comes in with noise. And what we're saying here is that any noise assessment for multiple components shall be assessed on the cumulative impact of those multiple components. The only comment I made there, Bill, is that I'm assuming here is that if those multiple components are concurrent, right?
Right.
Okay.
But I think what Alice is saying is we should clearly identify if there are thresholds, we should list them, and if they're not already addressed in Chapter 8, the environmental impact, if there are additional thresholds that the special permit granting authority, which is the planning board, a future planning board, which is not you all, they should be listed so that that doesn't escape them because they don't have the benefit of this debate.
Yeah.
Alice, how did
right, and if you're adding a new technology in town, which has a new nuisance, you got to address it. It's just like, you know, we got broadsided by the fumes from the marijuana smell. You know, I mean, we need to think through this so it doesn't have adverse impacts.
But again, as a special permit, we do have the ability to impose that at the time that the special permit is being reviewed, correct?
But you want it in the, you know, I'm not a fan of our marijuana bylaw, shall we say. I think it should have had
Who is?
all those things in it, you know? So anyway, let's work on this.
Okay.
Because
I'm happy to do so.
it's,
Bill, I did want to ask, and again, and my apologies for sending this out to you late last night. If there's anything right immediately obvious from my comments to you that you would like to address or chat with me or send back, oh, this is the reason why I'm adding this here, then please do so. I'm more than happy to take another stab at this here before I
Okay,
hand back
I
a
didn't
message.
see a whole lot of substantive comments on your part.
I'm insulted.
I thought I saw a lot of little edits, but I'll have to go look at it again.
No, as a matter of fact, I have to say this. Yeah, I accepted most of these here. My basic comment in most cases is that accepted as stated here.
Yeah.
I had no problems with them. You brought some really, I was basically saying no objection. You brought some really good points here. And it's very well complemented.
Well, I agree with Alice that we do have, because I don't, what I would prefer is that the regulation highlight those items of concern for a future board and that they are not left as unaddressed or non-defined topics, because while you do have that authority, it's much, much more enhanced when you set a definition and a regulation to it, because then when you go to court or somebody appeals you, you can say, look, we said A, B, and C, and they gave us A and B, which we see all the time. So that's why, yes, you have that authority, but that authority is sometimes able to be perceived as arbitrary or non-definitive. And the more definitive we can make the thresholds, the better off we are. I absolutely agree with the electrical engineer. Let's cite regulation that the NFPA develops and they constantly revise, and we simply cite the regulation and the most recent version of it, and we're up to date on that. But
So, Alec,
there are the local impacts, like, more than 2 or 3 of those trailers on a single site starts getting to be potentially burdensome and maybe even dangerous, and maybe just from a space impact. And if somebody decided to paint them pink because that's their right, then that's an impact on the neighborhood, and all of that needs to be addressed in the bylaw.
Right, so Alice, I saw 11 items, 11 bullet items in the email you sent out, right? To myself and to,
Oh,
and to Bill, to me and
Yeah.
Bill.
I just
Right.
put, I just wrote them down. I didn't count them, but yes.
No, okay, no, that's fine. I'm seeing those 11 items, which is great. I think I can start looking at some of these here, and I think we ought to have we ought to have a session where we can hammer through these here.
Yeah, maybe later next week, which is an off week for zoning.
Yes,
And I don't do anything on Fridays after zoning meetings, but the wash, so, it takes me so long. But yes, maybe next Wednesday or Thursday, Bill, look at your schedule and send something out, or,
Thursday, I think Francois and I have capital planning.
oh,
that's right. We have our CIPC hat on.
well,
But-
maybe next Wednesday? I don't know. what work.
No, Wednesday will not work for me. I have a doctor's appointment. I have a really heavy day with work.
Francois.
Let me
I-
collect my calendar, and
You
I
collect
will,
dates, because
and I
I'm
will-
more
I will
flexible
work-
than either of you guys,
yeah, and
probably.
yeah. And
Okay,
I mean,
so-
maybe I can address some things directly with you, and then we can bring in Bill based on his schedule, or maybe we do a subsequent. I think we may have to go to one, or at least one, but potentially maybe 2 or 3 iterations until we can get this
Nailed down.
nice and clean.
Yep, great.
Okay.
Okay,
But I wanted to say one more thing. I really, really, really appreciate Bill and I'm sorry, the gentleman's name who helped
Shepherd
you out.
Engineering.
I appreciate your feedback. It was very thorough, and I think it's very complimentary to this plan. So thank you.
You're welcome on behalf of both of us.
thanks. Okay. All right, we got a plan on that one. All right, so I'm just looking through this, so our accessory bylaw is on the 24th, and I wanted to check with Mallory about her. Is that still the 24th for you, Mallory?
Been advertised, so it's good to go for the 24th.
Okay, so they haven't booted you or your daughter's surgery due to the COVID stuff or
No.
anything?
No, we got confirmation about the pre-op today, so it looks like it's still moving forward.
Okay, so then we're just gonna finalize that today, that our next meeting will be the 24th, and that's the accessory
Our next meeting's the
dwelling
3rd.
unit. It shouldn't, oh, that's 2 meetings away, right? The accessory dwelling unit hearing, though, is on the 24th, right?
Yes.
And it's all been advertised that way.
Yep.
Is
Okay.
that February 24th? Must be.
Yes, February. Yeah.
February.
Yeah, we're making it the 4th Thursday instead of the 3rd Thursday because we need to, we don't have Mallory on the 3rd. She's with her daughter who's getting some surgery.
Understood.
Okay. So I wanted to, under old business, we finally made some level of progress with the agriculture bylaw, and Chris and I attended this meeting of the CDC yesterday night, and I'll let Christopher report on it, unless you don't want to.
No, I'm happy to report. It was
good.
it was a long meeting. It's a very long meeting, but we had a joint meeting between the planning board and the EDC. Attending at the meeting with me was Alice and Francois, and
Bob was there too.
we talked quite a bit about where everybody was kind of coming from for a agriculture accessory bylaw. And we talked about some ways we could get the process started. And the way we decided we get the process started would actually be by putting together a committee to work on it. And that committee would have somebody from the planning board, somebody from the EDC, somebody from the select board, and somebody from the agricultural commission, and a community member to do the homework and investigate. And the reason we ended up following that way is because there's been a bunch of people on the EDC, including myself, who've done quite a bit of research on this, and there's really 2 model bylaws that come even close to being applicable. One being Bolton, and one being Rutland. And neither one of them was close enough where I think we can really just take it as a template. So we need to go through the process and take a look at what's currently going on in town, what our current agro businesses look like, and come up with something that works for us and works for the businesses that we have in town right now.
Great. So the upshot of that is the select board, there's going to be requests made of them to appoint this committee that Chris has just described. And so assuming that they're going to appoint it, I would like to nominate Chris to be the member from the planning board to be on this committee. Anyone want to second that nomination? Francois?
If I can unmute myself, yes, I am seconding that motion. I'm sorry, I am,
Yeah.
you made the nomination.
motion.
I
Yeah,
am,
nominate. Okay, second it. So
I second it.
you're going to accept it. I know he's going to accept it. So all in favor, lived all I.
Steiger, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Okay. We look forward to great reports coming back.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in it, but I am just glad you're stepping up to do it because I'm like out straight. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really excited for what it can mean for the town. And
Yeah.
we've seen that there's certainly an economic need for it based upon some of the stuff that businesses are currently doing and some of the stuff they want to do. So looking forward to making some progress.
Great, great. Oh, and I wanted to also follow up with that. So there's a thought. The EDC is also working on revamping the commercial district in the middle of the town to expand it, perhaps. So there's I think it's called a town center district. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but they do have an MRPC grant to do it. And the thought was that these would come, they wouldn't be ready for annual town meeting, but they might be ready sometime in the fall or later for a special town meeting. They could be considered together along with the implementation chapter, because they're a big part of that implementation chapter to the master plan. So that's the rest of the grand plan from last night. Moving along, matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I did go to an MJTC meeting, and there's a new grant. They're going to open up rounds again for, the shared street spaces. So if any of you think of something that might qualify, you might pass it along to David and the select board. On moving along, I have a lot of things on the affordable housing front, some good, some bad. There is a sign out front, and it's a sign like those thermometers, only it's in the shape of a house where we're trying to meet a goal. And the local share that the local project committee and the town was supposed to raise towards the Habitat House was $35,000, which seemed doable at the time, but given everything is shut down, is not going to be doable, really, especially since our deadline. The family's been chosen to move in. They haven't been finally voted on. And the house will be done in early June. So we're trying to come up with some strategies to help. We do have some fundraisers, including one that my daughter and I, she's an event planner, trying to put together, which is a 5K run, which will happen in May. Perhaps the library's been quite successful with that. And a number of other things that people are working on that'll be like virtual things. And then we're just going to do more direct calling. And there's some matching funds offered. So if you get a call, if you can afford it at all, can make a donation to the house. You can also do that directly through the website for Habitat for Humanity North Central Mass. And if some of these fundraisers, I can spread the word. I'll send you all notices of what they are.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
do we have, do you know what the actual amount is that has been raised thus far?
Yes, 3,500 from local projects. So we are, well, I mean, it's just not really going to happen. So one of the things we're going to do is put another CPC request in. This is not me, it's Habitat for, well, it's the local committee of which I'm a member, but the local committee and the Habitat for Humanity North Central Mass, they're going to put in another CPA request, which I think is the Affordable Housing Committee we should support for, I think she's gonna apply for 25,000. Last year they were given 20. And what I've come to understand since this being the first and muddling my way through is that it's very common for towns in this area to not only give the land, but to fund the materials for the house, almost all of it out of some of CPC funds, or at least a bigger share than just 20,000, you know, some significant share. They have already raised 100,000. And the house cost is like 179, all the materials. It's also been a bad year for materials costs for them. Almost all the labor is free, but there are the materials, and it is a 3-bedroom house.
Madam
So
Chair,
that's, yeah,
in a related note to this, the ARPA
yes,
requirements just got broadened quite a bit because there were previously all kinds of restrictions on the money. In the final rule that's coming out, towns are going to be able to count up to $10 million as replacement revenue. And what that means is money that falls into the bucket of replacement revenue can essentially be used for anything. There's a few restrictions, like it can't be used for setting up like rainy day funds and stuff like that. But it's otherwise pretty broad what you can use it for. So there's going to be an RFP process. So so watch for that when it comes out. The committee has not released what the RFP is going to be.
as soon as you get it, will you let me know? Because I will
Yeah,
forward to
absolutely.
Carolyn. The problem is if we leave Habitat for Humanity with a great shortfall, they don't really have any way to make it up, except to like pass on that extra cost, and that defeats the purpose of the affordable housing, right? To build it into their structure, or to try to find some donor at the national level or from a richer area. It's a very big problem. And I don't think they would ever partner with us again if we, you know, just say, oh, well, we couldn't raise 35,000, it's COVID year, you know. So I do want to pull all the stops and try to make it happen. And in fairness to the committee, groundbreaking was October 9th. And everything was shut down starting Thanksgiving, and it's still shut down, right? So fundraising events, we did one, you know, but it's all going to have to be done virtually. So the ARPA funds would be very helpful. Do you know if those funds are limited to money lost as of the 31st of 2020 or 2021, or?
It covers a pretty big range. It was, I want to say it was from a date in 2020 through 2023. Don't hold me to what the dates were, but it's a many year range of lost revenue, and it goes into the future too.
Okay, well, that would be great, because Habitat for Humanity deals with all kinds of local project committees, you know, and what they're usually able to raise. And she's a really articulate grant writer. So as soon as you know, let me know, and we will do that. That was on my list to ask.
I would throw out the additional information. It's likely that the town's going to get even more money than it's already received because there's going to be a second round. So far, we're getting late. I want to say so far we were looking at 1.4 million, but it looks like the town's going to get an additional $1 million. But I do know that that the select board is going to be looking at some strategic plans and strategic initiatives and giving some feedback back to the ARPA committee about that. So there will be some guidelines on how to spend the money.
When I meet with them on Monday, I've asked David to please let me speak 1 minute about the affordable housing situation with that house too. So I'll mention it. Anyway, and hopefully garner support for both an ARPA and a CPA grant. CPA monies were also enhanced this year through state COVID relief money. So I don't know, we'll take a vote later to support it, as the Affordable Housing Committee hasn't been filed yet, the CPA. I think it really is getting late, and I don't have a lot of others. I really wanted to say that master plan should the implementation chapter process should fire up pretty soon. Progress on updating zoning bylaws. I think Lori is really trying to get that up and posted. We've been working on that. Progress on minutes, Mallory's working on, I don't know, any word on minutes, Mallory?
Yeah, we've been working on it and we have someone coming in. She's starting with tonight's and she's gonna continue forward and work with me on getting those all taken care of.
Yeah, it'd be great to bring them up to date when the year turns over, by the time the year turns
Absolutely.
over. So, and also, Melanie, I want to ask you one more thing is, I worked on that scenic road decision terms for the forms,
Yep,
scenic road, but you had sent me at one point an application that needs a little work too.
yeah,
Can you send that to me again? I've lost it.
sure.
And let's put the package together to decide and as an agenda item to approve, to leave to the next board, something that's clear.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm ready to go to second public call for second public comments, of which I believe there are none. But
I do have
anybody
one
out there
item
still?
I did have a point I want to make, and that
Okay,
is, again,
Francois.
it is January, and as I do typically every year in January, I ask if we have made any progress regarding the solar fields providing their annual reports.
Mallory,
I haven't got anything yet, to my
time to
knowledge.
send out letters.
All right. It is important. It's imperative. We're trying to make sure that we're, especially with battery energy storage system, we're doing something more more akin to the carrot and the stick, more like the stick. We don't have that, I believe, with the large scale photovoltaic systems, but I think we need to continue harping on this here and emphasizing that this is a requirement.
I do have all those names, Mallory, for the fields. I don't know, I have all the addresses. Can we get a letter out to them? A reminder? of the
I do
annual
recall,
reports?
I do recall that last year we did not have a majority of those solar fields did not respond, and I think that is that's not right.
It's not right. It needs to be we need to point out it's in their, if it's in their special permit, they must do this. So I'll help you write a letter, Mallory. Let's get them out. I
Okay.
don't know what the due date is, but I think that's a really good point. Okay, anything else? Next meeting is February 3rd. And I don't know, I'm looking at whether it should be virtual. I think we should do it virtual and then hope that enough of the virus will clear out that we can hold the one on the end of February in person or mixed hybrid. That's my thinking. Anybody else? But you want to stay virtual for the 3rd?
I would prefer if it were for egotistical reasons, just simply because of the fact that I do have a granddaughter, and if I am coming back to California, I want to make sure that I'm healthy.
Yes, okay, that's what we'll do. All right, so it'll be virtual, it'll be February 3rd, and then we'll see what those graphs are looking like and what other boards are doing for the meeting on the 4th week. Okay, motion to adjourn? Anybody?
Before we
Motion to
do
adjourn.
it,
Oh.
before we do that, one
Yeah.
moment. I don't know if we can show this here.
Oh,
Oh.
he's waving at us.
This is why I love being here.
Oh, she's really cute. It's kind of shadowy here.
Super
I know.
cute.
I apologize. I apologize.
We should have a little contest.
They
with-
just came back from their walk.
Yeah, I know, it's still nice out
Anyway,
there.
thanks very much for indulging me.
Yeah, we should have Christopher compete.
Oh, he's upstairs. I can hear him screaming from a distance, so we'll skip
right,
that
well-
for tonight.
All right, make a motion to adjourn for me. Somebody.
Motion, we adjourn.
I
Okay.
second the motion. Thank
All
you very
right,
much.
all in favor? Aye, and
Aye.
off we
François
go.
Steiger, yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everybody.